The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, we are kicking off our reviews of the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. This is part one of the Guardian reviews. We're going to take a look at Obsidian Bracelet, Bolas, Breach the Door, and Grievous Wound. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before we get started, a quick reminder of how we rate cards here on The Whisper in Darkness. The best of the best get an Elder Sign, while the worst of the worst get an Auto Fail, and the cards in between get a +1, 0, or Elder Thing respectively. Cards that you build around or cards that are good in one particular deck get a Bless token, while cards that we believe are destined to end up on the list of taboos or are simply bad for the big game get a Curse token. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you content like these player card reviews. Speaking of amazing members of the community, George Theosophilis is the latest patron to Embrace the Darkness. Thank you very much, George, for your support. It is greatly appreciated, and I hope that your run through the Scarlet Keys campaign is a good one. If you'd like to be amazing like George and support the channel's goals and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Special thanks to Cole Monroe Chitty for the amazing art that graces the channel, Nicole Fiscus for the Whisper in Darkness logo, and Nate Lost in Time and Space for the intro as well as the overlays. Thank you very much. I couldn't do it without you. Without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, Arkham Horror fans, to the channel. We have returned. Well, at least some of us have returned. Matastrophic and I are here to review the player cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion that was released in October or November, depending on where you are in the world. Unfortunately, Nate has been studying non-Euclidean geometry, and, well, he's gone.
He is literally
vanished.
lost in time and space.
Literally,
Like,
so...
he's between the dimensions now. We can't find him. If you can find him, just let us know. I just want to make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Matastrophic and I are going to press on with the reviews until... Nate Lost in Time and Space returns from whatever dimension has consumed him. We are going to start off with the Guardian cards as usual. We are going to review the customizable cards in this set at the end. A lot of the customizable cards are like 3 or 4 cards in one, so those really deserve videos of their own. So we're going to review all of those at the end of the review cycle. Each class received 3 customizable cards, and so that will take quite a bit of time to go through some of those, as some of them are quite I wouldn't necessarily say complicated, but there's a lot of abilities to go through and stuff like that. So we're going to take a look at those at the end. We're using the same rating system as usual. We are going to start off with Obsidian Bracelet. It is a 3-cost asset with a willpower skill icon, the item and charm trait. Obsidian Bracelet may only be assigned damage and or horror dealt by treachery effects. Obsidian Bracelet may be assigned damage and or horror dealt to other investigators at your location. It has 3 health, 3 sanity, and takes up a hand slot. What do you think about this one, Matastrophic?
I think this one is it's actually pretty decent. I immediately want to compare it to True Grit and Something Worth Fighting For from previous sets. So the thing about Obsidian Bracelet is that it has it costs the same as both of those. It has 3 health and 3 sanity instead of 3 health or 3 sanity, and also does the thing where it can take damage and or horror for your friends. The only thing, though, that I think holds back Obsidian Bracelet is the fact that it's a hand slot, which is kind of...
Yeah, that hand slot, I think, really hurts this card.
Yeah, in a traditional Guardian in particular. Yeah, because the other two are... they're slotless, which is pretty nice because they didn't interfere with anything. I think if this was slotless, this would actually be pretty sweet. Yeah, because you've got the restriction that it can only be assigned damage and horror dealt by treacheries. So, like, when I see that, I kind of want to slot it into a traditional guardian because if you're a traditional guardian and you're dealing with all the enemies, that means you're preventing all the damage from being dealt by enemies to your to your friends, and then what's left is treachery effects, which Obsidian Bracelet would cover. Yeah, but the fact that it's a hand slot, it kind of hinders you from doing that, dealing with the enemies. So like I just wish it was either slotless or an accessory because Guardians don't have a lot of competition for accessories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I would like
I
it
took
more.
a look at this card, and I think it's, they design a lot of the cards in this set for the investigators, and it seems pretty clear that this was designed with Carson in mind because Carson has twos across the board, and so
Hmm.
he is definitely
Oh,
in danger from the encounter deck basically having its way with him. With
okay, that would make sense
twos
actually.
across the board, you're not going to be passing a whole lot of treacheries without some help.
Oh,
And so having a card like this that prevents the damage and horror from, or that can soak damage and horror from treachery effects is very useful. But
hmm,
man, that hand slot is really really painful. And
yeah.
I took a look at some of the Carson builds. Now, granted, there aren't a lot of them on Arkham DB. I'm ignoring the grief deck on there, uh, but even the few Carson builds that are out there now, they're all using Runic Axe as their main weapon,
Oh, and that's two-handed.
which takes two
Yeah.
hands. So this card is sort of DOA in Carson, and I think in a lot of sort of traditional Guardians, it's just not going to make the cut either because either they're going to be wielding two handed weapons. I think the one Carson deck I saw was Runic Axe, the other was Sledgehammer. Same difference, using two handed weapons. In
Hmm.
other, you've got shotgun, you've got lightning gun, the list goes on. And even if you're not using two handed weapons, you're probably using like a weapon in one hand and maybe have a backup weapon in your other, or some maybe
Okay.
a flashlight or something like that. And I agree with you. I think that if this had been slotless, it would have been a lot more interesting. And I think it's worth noting that in those Carson decks where you'd sort of expect to see this card, they're playing Hallowed Mirror instead because it does take up the accessory slot. It doesn't provide soak, but it does provide healing, which, and Hallowed Mirror is a pretty good card in its own right. So yeah,
Yeah.
I sort of
I
feel like this one is didn't quite
although
hit the mark.
hmm, although I would actually consider if this was accessory, I would actually consider it kind of almost like an alternative to Hallowed Mirror because it is providing three health soak and three sanity soak for your friends. Whereas Hallowed Mirror, you have to play Soothing Melody multiple times to get to that point. Man, this would be just a perfect accessory as a nice alternative to Hallowed Mirror. Oh my gosh, yeah, I would kind of like this. Even in Carson, it'd be great as an accessory because as you say, if he's gonna fail treacheries, then it's great he has Obsidian Bracelet to like deal with it. I think it could have a home in Amina.
Yeah, it is a charm. So
Yeah.
Amina is all about, I believe, level 0 to 4, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. And
Yeah.
she seems to be the one who is geared towards, having a bunch of her hands full and then getting extra hand slots by converting her arcane slots into additional hand slots. So perhaps it will find a home there. But
Yeah, the reason I actually say that is because, okay, so one thing about Amina is that she has threes in all four stats. Yeah, my kind of lady, right? What that means, there is a slight downside to that. It means that she's not, because she doesn't have like a five in agility or a five in willpower, it means that if she runs into some, say, a Rotting Remains or a Grasping Hands, something basic like that, she has a decent chance without boosting of failing that test by one or two. And then that's where the Obsidian Bracelet could come into play. Is that because she has all threes, she's able to just fail random treacheries by like one or two, and then this would soak up the consequences of them.
yeah,
I think there's something to that. And if you can't afford it as Amina, just put a Doom on it. It costs three. That's the magic number for Amina.
Yeah, I think I did mention here on our list here that the cost is a bit high as well for uh, something that isn't a weapon in a hand slot for a guardian.
Yeah.
3 is a bit on the pricey side. I think Hallowed Mirror goes for 2,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
another consideration. How would you rate this one?
Elder Thing. I think
Yeah,
it would be a nice 0 if it was a accessory, but as a hand slot, nah, Elder Thing. I wouldn't. It's not terrible, but it's not exactly auto fail either because it's decent amount of soak and it
yeah,
helps. Yeah.
yeah. I think the soak and the health and sanity is very generous, but the hand slot really makes
Yep.
this a difficult pick. I'll give it an Elder Thing as well. The next card we're going to take a look at is Bolas. It is a 1-cost event that has a combat and agility skill icon in the tactic trait. Evade, attempt to evade using combat instead of agility. If you succeed and the enemy is non-elite, attach Bolas to it. Attached enemy gets -1 evade value, forced after attached enemy moves exhausted. I kind of feel like I have been waiting for a card like this one, just to have 1 copy in my Guardian deck, just in case I need to evade an enemy that I don't want to fight. I quite like the fact that this attaches to an enemy and gets it -1 evade, and then basically hobbles it for the remainder of the game, so that if you have to leave and it has to chase you, it always exhausts. So you're not going to get attacked during the enemy phase, and then if you need to evade it during your turn, you're good to go. You've got that extra evade. What do you think about this one?
I do like it. I think it has a home when dealing with high health non-elites, like 5.
Yeah.
Things that are just it's like a bag of health to deal with. I think the attached enemy moves to exhausted effect. I think it's a pretty elegant way to deal with the danger of like the downside of evading, and that is hunters still hunt you, and then when they hunt, they immediately jump on you, and you have no window to deal with that. I think this pretty elegantly solves that problem of hunters coming after you, even though you've evaded them. So I kind of like this card actually. I think it solves a problem.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, this when I saw this card initially, it really piqued my interest, and the enemy that I immediately think of when I see cards like this is the Mindless Dancers from Before the Black Throne, where they have very high fight values, a ton of hit points, and I think their evade is 3, so throwing a Bolas around them drops them to 2 if you don't want to have to deal with them. And the problem with those is that they also bounce in and out of play quite frequently, so killing them is kind of a pain because you're wasting a lot of resources for something that could be back the very next turn.
Exactly. That's
true. And so throwing a Bolas on them keeps them on the table at least until the board resets and you don't have to deal with them again, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing I would say is that if you're looking for an alternative to this card, Daring has been an option since Dream Eaters, that if you're just looking for sort of a 1-card skill solution, you have Daring available. But yeah, I actually quite like this one, quite like this card.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it compared to Sweep Kick. Sweep Kick, it costs an XP, but it's 1. It does something evadey. Sweep Kick deals 2 damage. It evades it. So okay, that's pretty good actually. Like it's a lot of good value there. This one, okay, so it doesn't do any damage. It just evades it. And if your intention is to like not defeat it and just let it chase you and never really catch up with you, I'm thinking like a solo situation where you blow through locations pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially at 0 XP. I like it.
Yeah. Because you do find yourself in a situation in solo where it's just like, I don't really want to kill this thing, or you don't have time to kill the thing. You need to get moving. And so being able to use this and then get ahead of it,
run away
is pretty nice. How would you rate this one?
I don't think I'm quite ready to go Elder Sign, but I'm debating between 0 and +1.
I think I was gonna settle on a 0. I think it's it's a nice tool to have in your toolbox. I'd
Uh-huh.
play a copy at least. I'm not sure if I'd be prepared to commit more than a deck slot to it, depending on the
Yeah.
scenario. I think this card, I actually quite like this card as a in those rogues who can take adaptable as well, where
Oh yeah.
if you're
Uh-huh.
in a scenario where the enemies happen to be tougher or are very bola-able, uh, rogues
Yeah.
that can get adaptable can swap this card in for that scenario and then swap it out
Oh, that's right. And
as
then I'm thinking,
necessary.
yeah, then now you've reminded me of Slip Away card, which in my opinion, has been totally power crept over, and partially this kind of helps with that. I think I'm gonna go +1 for that alone. I think it's not. I think you could build a whole deck around stuff like this. This is something I've been wanting to see for a long time, like the evade focus guardian,
Hmm.
and I think this would be part of that kind of build. You got me thinking now, like Lily Chen or something, where you evade and run away from everything. This is interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna go +1. This is an interesting card. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite ready to go that high, but I do
Yeah.
definitely like
Well,
this card, and I have encountered many situations as a solo player where if I had this in my hand, it would be the answer to my prayers. So
one thing to note about that is it's a tactic. It can go on stick to the plan.
true,
So as a one of, like, that's like perfect, because if you like when you hit the situation you need it, if it's on stick to the plan, it's always there ready to go, and it's never a dead draw because it's on stick to the plan.
right. The next card we're going to take a look at is Breach the Door. This is a 2-cost event that has intellect and combat skill icons, insight, tactic, and police trait. Test 1 combat. If you succeed, attach Breach the Door to your location with 1 resource on it for each point you succeed by. As leads, reduce attached locations shroud by 1 for each lead on Breach the Door. As much as I like Bolas, I do not like this card.
Okay.
I feel as though it is incredibly slow.
Okay. Yeah, I can
It's
see that.
very pricey at 2.
Hmm.
And at this stage of the game, I think Guardians have so many cards that let them cheat clues. You've got Scene of the Crime, you've got Greta, you've got the excellent Field Agent in this very box, that this card just doesn't
Okay.
seem to. Thematically, I think it's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
thematically, it's great, but to me, this just seems too slow, and it's not really what Guardians need to be doing. What do you think?
Yeah. I think I'm thinking about this from like a different perspective. I think this is where our solo multiplayer divergence really happens. Because I look at this and I think this is a way for the strength focused guardian to help, deal with 4 shroud locations, for the team. Because, like, let's say you hit a 4 shroud. There aren't very many of these, I'll admit, but let's say you hit a 4 shroud location that has like 6 or 8 clues on it because you're playing 3 or 4 player, and it's going to require like a bunch of tests from the team. The fact that you can lower the difficulty of all the tests from the team is, I kind of like that. And like that could be your support way, your support card for helping deal with the nasty locations. And I'm talking things that are just too many clues too many clues for like Scene of the Crime to really work. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Because I think those events, as good as they are, I think they start losing their potency in like 3 and 4 player, because like you hit a location that just has, it's just too many, to, and then when you got to use the event effectively multiple times. Whereas Breach the Door, it kind of, if you're in a team without a seeker, because the seeker like is gonna mop up no matter what the shroud is. But
yeah.
if you're on a
Well, see,
team
that's
without a
sort of
seeker,
the perspective I was
yeah,
approaching it from. Is
yeah,
if I'm playing multiplayer, I sort of expect to see a seeker at the table, and
yeah,
I tend to expect the seeker to just be a powerhouse and just be like, shroud,
yeah.
what shroud, and just
Oh yeah,
chew through clues and
I think this is the
locations
part.
like crazy. Now, I
I think this is
did
another
actually
case
play
thing, I gotta
recently
admit.
where we didn't have a Seeker. When I was playing with Nathan and Base down in Portland, we didn't have a dedicated Seeker for one game, and I could see a card like this coming in very handy in that sort of situation where 4 Shroud is a lot to deal with if you're not a Seeker. And so having a Guardian come in and say, okay, well, I'm going to break the door down, we're going to lower the Shroud value of this thing by 2, 3, I think is probably reliable. I don't like, unless you're really committing a lot to that combat skill test, I don't think you're going to get much more than 2 or 3 most of the time. Like even Mark Harrigan is at 5, you draw a -2, he's at 3. You know, depending on how important the location is, you may want to pump it a little bit. So yeah, I can see this definitely working in certain situations. I guess I sort of expect to have a Seeker around who basically treats Shroud as being largely irrelevant, and the number of clues is
I think this is where divergence is happening, because like my goal nowadays is to like not play with Seekers ever again. Like introduce some challenge back into the game, you know?
And so that's when, you know, if Guardians do need to pick up a couple clues along the way, you can have, you know, Greta, Field Agent, Scene of the Crime, etc., 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 or even like just a skill like Take the Initiative is usually enough to get you a clue.
That's true.
If necessary. So maybe maybe I'd be more happy with this card if it actually did something with the clue. It just feels like you're sort of wasting an entire action.
You are to spending an action to effectively commit cards later. Is kind of what you're doing. You know, you're basically generating icons for the team with this, because it doesn't actually get you anywhere.
So how would you rate this one?
Oh God, I think okay. So here's the thing. Just from our discussion alone, it makes me want to say bless, because, like, we're talking about, okay, well, in the right team, without a Seeker, this is pretty good. But if you're playing like normally, and you have a character who doesn't care about Shroud at all, this is kind of terrible. So, you know what I will have to say? I won't say what's hilarious is, even though the card is called Breach the Door, if the door is locked, you're still not investigating.
That's true.
It's like you smash the door with a battering ram, but it's still locked, so you gotta wait till someone finds the key to unlock the door.
That's right.
Yeah.
Locked door is already has already beaten this card.
Yeah. Oh, as for a rating, you know what? I'm gonna stand by the bless, because it reminds me of a style of Arkham horror that I enjoy very much in multiplayer, where like Shroud matters, you know, and in that game philosophy, this is pretty cool. You know, you got the Guardian, they're not good at clues, so what do? They help the team, you know, with a card like this. So I'm doing it.
Well, I'm going to rate it based on the other version of Arkham Horror, where Shroud does not matter to most Seekers, and they, if you've got a Seeker along, they should be able to handle most locations. Shroud be damned. So I'm going to give this one an Elder Thing. It is, I do agree with you, though, that I can see if you are playing in multiplayer where this could be quite useful. So, but the solo player in me, this is.
Oh yeah, it's solo.
This is just this is so slow that. That I would not be playing this. The next card we're going to take a look at is Grievous Wound. It's a 1-cost event with 2 combat skill icons, tactic trait, fast, play after you successfully attack a non-elite enemy using a melee asset. Attach Grievous Wound to the attacked enemy, forced at the end of the round. Deal 1 damage to attached enemy. So I will say about this card that level 0 cards with matching combat skill icons are exceedingly rare in this game. Cards that deal bonus damage are also pretty rare. Most of the damage effects are attached to the weapons themselves, or in many cases, events if you're playing somebody like Nathaniel Cho. What do you think about this one?
I need to ask myself, what does this have that Overpowered doesn't do already? And what does this do that Vicious Blow doesn't do already? So I see what it's trying to do here. You attack the enemy, then you play it. Okay, that's cool. It means like where Vicious Blow, you have to like commit it, and then if you miss, you lose the Vicious Blow. There's that. Downside, it doesn't do anything until the round ends, which means the enemy gets to attack you. That's my assumption here.
Yeah.
Okay. So an enemy phase is going to go by. I assume that the enemy is going to live because if the enemy was going to die before the enemy phase, you wouldn't play the Grievous Wound. So you're basically saying, I'm going to attack it. I'm not going to do anything additional to it. I'm going to spend a resource to maybe defeat it at the end of the turn. At that point, why am I not playing Vicious Blow? Because I want this to trigger multiple times. And if I want this to trigger multiple times, over the course of multiple turns to eventually defeat it, Bolas does the job better. Because Bolas is like, okay, so if I want to take something out and not defeat it, I think Bolas is what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's an interesting card because it's similar to Vicious Blow in a way, like you mentioned, saying that with Vicious Blow you have to commit it before you'd pull, and there is that chance you miss and then you don't get the damage. That's always heartbreaking when that happens. This lets you see what happens first and then say, aha, I have grievously wounded you in the end. But the lifespan of most non-elite enemies is measured in actions, not rounds.
Yeah, that's very true.
If you're playing sort of a traditional Guardian using a big gun or a big hammer or flamethrower or anything like that, this is not interesting to you because you are going to obliterate the enemy long before the end of the round hits. Or at least you should be. If you're not, well, you've got bigger problems.
Yeah, plus the restrictions. It has to be with a melee asset. It has to be a non-elite enemy. It's like the effect's kind of small that it doesn't even deserve those restrictions. If it's said at the end of the investigator phase, I think this might have a place.
Yeah. Now I have seen some talk of investigators who might be interested in this, and so if it's not going to be interesting to like sort of your traditional big gun, big weapon Guardian who's just going to smash things and destroy them, then you're looking at somebody who's playing more of the finesse game. Maybe I've seen Daniela mention because she has that auto evade, so she can auto evade, then tag it, then drop this on it, sort of kill it that way.
She just kill it.
But see, that's the thing. That's the game. Yeah. The game, as we sort of play it these days, rewards you for just obliterating enemies. There's really no point in. I mean, maybe if you end up with a very large enemy, you evade it, tag it with this, and then just let it bleed out.
But once again, you're looking at a game where enemies are often like 5 health. We discussed this with Bolas. Like, this doesn't happen very often, but at least with Bolas, it just solves the problem. Like where I feel like this doesn't solve the problem. This Grievous Wound. Like, let's say you run into a 6 health enemy, right? And you deal 2 damage to it with your machete. Let's say you attach Grievous Wound. Okay, the enemy's still attacking you, and it's still going to attack you for a total of 4, enemy phases before it goes down. So it's like, why did I play this? When you could have just played Bolas and dealt with it.
I mean, we haven't seen what the Scarlet Keys campaign expansion holds yet in terms of enemies. I know we always say, well, one of these days
there will come a day.
There will come a day. One of these days when we get a campaign where enemies are tough to deal with, and you need alternative means to deal with them besides just smashing them in the face. But 6 years on, the number of enemies that require that amount of tact is few and far between.
And even then, Bolas is in the same box, and I think does the job better.
How would you rate this one?
Auto fail. Just play Bolas instead.
Oh wow, giving this one an
Yeah.
auto fail.
I mean, you got like Bolas. We just talked about it in the same video. It's like, just play that.
I don't know if I'm ready to go that far. I mean, it is bonus damage.
But Bolas has there's no restriction. Well, there's the non-elite restriction, but you don't have to use a melee item for the Bolas to work. You know, Bolas, it prevents the thing from attacking you during the enemy phase. You know, it's just like, what does this give you? Yeah.
No, I'm because of the double combat skill icons and the bonus damage, I'm gonna stick at Elder Thing.
Okay.
I think if you're a guardian or I think probably not necessarily a guardian, maybe an off-class guardian might be interested in this more than than a pure guardian.
You gotta use melee though. Like, you have to use a melee asset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is somewhat restrictive, but I'm gonna go with Elder Thing and that. So if you're using a melee weapon, maybe take a look at this. The icons are nice, but just be prepared if you're gonna need some way to deal with the enemy, possibly for several rounds, because you're gonna probably get tacked at least once, if not multiple times. Yep. If you're hoping to take down something with a lot of health with this, it's going to be several turns, in which case maybe there are other tools that are worth considering.
Bolas. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's going to do it for part 1 of our look at the Guardian cards in the Scarlet Keys Investigator expansion. Let us know in the comments down below what you think. Any final thoughts, Matt?
Bolas? Bolas is pretty cool. I like Bolas.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.